In the past few months, I've gotten quite a few comments and questions about reading reports because people can get confused about how to approach them, and I thought I'd make this video to clear up and maybe reveal one or two interactions about reading reports that you might not know about already. So I'm not going to get too in-depth with the basic elements of report reading because I do think most of it is fairly common sense, and I'm just going to get straight into my list of 10. So my first example here is going to be that the power difference up here doesn't necessarily determine the winner. So you see here, Altizio here lost 0.04 million more power than I did here, yet I had the defeat. This is because typically in reports, the loser is actually the person who loses more troops rather than loses the most power. So you see here, I lost like 1.6 million, he lost about 1.3 million, but because I lost more lower tier troops, therefore having more troops counting towards this number, and he lost fewer troops, he is the one that actually ends up winning this fight, not me. The question that then can become though, did he really win the fight because he lost more power? This can become a bit more significant if you're hitting into, say, like a T1 bow trap, where you may kill, let's say, 10 million tier 1s, but you yourself lose 3 million T4s. You may win that report, but the defender in that scenario might view that as a victory morally, if nothing else, for themselves because they got more relevant troops killed, they got more merit and things like that. Number 2 is going to be that the hospital capacity under wounded can be exceeded by reinforcers hospital limits. So here, for example, Denkura has been rallied, and he obviously does not have a 1.7 million hospital capacity. Typically, you hit someone, their troops go to the hospital up until their hospital capacity, and then anything killed beyond that will then die directly. But in a situation like this, since he was reinforced, the reinforcers, if they are sharing the dead through being on the front line with the lowest tiers of troop at least, you can see here that this far right column is wounded, and in this situation you have to get through all of our participating troops and all of our hospital capacities until you get to the actual rally defenders troops themselves. So if there's any questions about how someone has so many wounded troops and how you haven't killed more, this is the most likely explanation for that. At number 3, typically you will capture or lose your lord when your troops hit 0. So when a march is fully defeated, then whoever is defending against that defeated march will capture the lord. In this report example, you see that not all the troops are actually defeated. When this happens, this will be because of the reroute effect. So if you see the battle record and scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that almost 100k troops here were rerouted away throughout the duration of that battle. So because of that, you don't actually have to defeat the entirety of the troops that are listed up here, and the little bar here won't show as fully defeated because this little sliver of red wasn't actually participating due to reroute. Number 4, under lineup, you can actually hover the participating dragons and see all the details pertaining to them, so power, strength, defense, agility, crit chance, all the skills. This can become relevant if you're trying to lurk what dragon skills or levels your opponent has in a fight, or even just trying to lurk the skills of which your alliance members are using. You'll only be able to see the names of your allies. The opposing dragons won't show names, they'll only show dragons themselves. But if you're trying to lurk through your alliance mates and you see, say, a gathering skill, you'll know who to message and tell to get rid of it and put something useful in their dragon instead. Number 5 is the damage breakdown button, which is this. Now, this isn't a hugely recent addition, but it's recent enough to have not been given huge amounts of attention, so some people may have missed this, but if you click this button, it will show all the damage sources for both you and your enemy in a fight, and you can use this to help you see where damage sources are coming from and potentially see why you won a fight or why you lost a fight. So here, for example, there aren't too many conclusions to draw just because I won this fight purely because of troop numbers realistically. So of course my normal attack numbers will be significantly higher as a result. But you'll be able to see how much damage is coming from dragon attacks. This includes Tear, Flame, and follow-up. Normal attacks, weakness attacks through Jamie. You'll notice with weakness synergies that their normal attack numbers will be lower and their weakness attack higher, because when Jamie begins proccing and starts causing weakness attacks, then there'll obviously no longer be any more normal attacks to contribute towards this number. Active army skill is, of course, commander actives. Female synergies will typically have the highest numbers here. And then commander awakening damage is 4-star abilities, such as Annie's 4-star, with the 3% troops killed part of her ability, if I hover that. So her active ability itself will count under commander active skill, but this 3% currently deployed troop wipeout, that will come under awakening skill damage. Rhea bleeds and crits will come under awakening skill damage. Cersei Wildfire will come under commander awakening damage. Anything like that will be able to be seen here. So you see here, the only commander awakening damage in this whole fight, I believe, is his Annie, and we'll be able to see this quite easily. It's 20.8k. So we go to the battle record. You might have a Salma proc at 1 second for Annie. There we go. So this top line is her active skill, not the awakening skill. So this isn't relevant, but this line is. So that's about 10k of the 21k. Then it would have cast again at 11. We can find her. Here we go again. So again, only the second line matters. That takes it almost up to the 20k. So I imagine what is going to happen here is that his troop numbers are going to be so depleted as we get towards the end of this fight, and he's going to get wiped out fairly quickly. So it's going to cast once more at 21 seconds, but because his troop numbers are so low now because of what's left, it will barely do any damage, and it will bring it up to that 21k. And yeah, there we go. So hits for the third time and does about 10% of the damage as the previous ones, and that adds up to the 21k commander awakening damage that we can see in the damage breakdown here. Next up, at number 6, if we go to the bonus tab, if you hover, say total attack here, you can't see the full amount of buffs here because it goes off the screen. There's no way to scroll this either. If I go down, it just goes to the next one. If I go up, it goes to combat rate. So if it goes off the screen in a situation like this, if you click this exclamation mark, it'll bring up this, and you can then scroll all the way to the bottom, and there are these extra things, extra sources that we couldn't see just from hovering the actual stat, which historically has been the primary way of actually looking at these stat sources. On the same note of these exclamation marks, if we go all the way to the bottom, there are lots of good things here that you may not care or have thought about before. We're seeing base attack, casualty rate can change through dragon skills and whatnot. You can see counter rates, which can be adjusted through various means now with weapons and the like. But all the way down here, you'll see all these special effects coming from dragons. You'll see the sources, but if you actually hover this exclamation mark, you can see what the allied dragons have actually stacked this to. So this can be potentially quite useful if you look at, say here, I have reroute on my own dragon, and then an extra reroute on Vio's dragon here. So there's 2 sources of reroute, but there's no visual representation of like, is my reroute level 9? Is hers level 9 as well? So it goes to 15%. Is hers level 1? So it's below the max stacks. So if we go to bonus, go all the way down, find reroute, and then hover the exclamation mark, you can see that it is a total of a 13.5% reroute effect. So it's still a little bit below that max number you can reach. So if you're really trying to min-max rallies and see where you could have squeezed out a bit more effectiveness, potentially things like this can help in that, help in seeing potentially where your opponent had a bit of an edge on you, and anything like that. Then next up, through this statistics page, you can actually see the breakdowns of whose troops were killed. Now, this can be relevant because, as an example, over the Night King event, I saw a lot of people wondering why they had, say, a report on the Night King where they dealt, say, 300k damage, but their ranking on the Night King leaderboard didn't go up or down. Now, what happened in those situations normally was they were getting kills, but they were only actually getting kills on the Night King's reinforcing troops from White Walkers or generals. So what can happen in situations like that is if you look in statistics, you can then see all the individual participants on both sides. Here, he has no reinforcements, so I can't show it there, but you can see who has troops in the fight and who took wounded and dead in that fight. So in that Night King scenario, what you would have is, say, like, the White Walker 1 up here takes 200k losses, General 1 here has 50k losses, White Walker 2 has 50k losses, and then the Night King at the bottom, if he has, say, like, mono T5 bow at the back that isn't getting touched, the Night King then could have 0 losses. And despite your report face showing you getting kills on him, you're going to have to look into statistics and look at the specifics of who actually took wounded or dead to actually see if that person specifically had any wounded or dead in reality. As a bit of a follow-on from that, in that scenario I used the Night King having T5 bow and therefore not getting hit as an example. So the way targeting will work is the lowest tier of unit on the front line will get hit first. So let's say in this situation I've sent T1s and T2 inf as well. All the T1 inf would have to die, then all the T2 inf would have to die, then all the T3 inf would have to die, then all the T4 inf would have to die, and only after all they die would it go to the cav, and the same thing would happen with T1, T2, T3, and T4. This is then reversed when it comes to troop casualties. So if we look up here, for example, the troop of the highest tier will get hospitalized first, and of the lowest tier will die first. So the fight will happen as normal, and then it will look at the troop tiers of what was actually hit and determine what dies and what goes into hospital off that. So you see here, Vayne, he sent T1s, T3s, T4s, T5s of both Cav and Inf. This right-hand column is wounded, so only the T5 Inf and Cav went into his hospital. There is a little excess on the survivors because of the reroute skill, but without that, all the T1 Inf, all the T3 Inf, all the T4 Inf, and all the T4 Cav as well would have gone past the hospital and directly died, and then the T5s would have split in terms of reaching his hospital capacity, and then the remaining excess of T5 that goes beyond his hospital capacity would have then died. So your highest tier of troops will be prioritized by the hospital, and your lowest tier of troop will be what dies first. And finally, going all the way full circle when it comes to determining who wins a fight, if you go to the battle record and scroll all the way to the very bottom, you'll notice there is casualties and actual loss. So casualties is the total number of defeated in a fight, whereas actual loss is the actual amount of troops that died or went to hospital in that fight. So these numbers are different because of ghost troop effects. The most common form of that is the reinforcement dragon skill. So you see here, it offsets about 21k infantry casualties. So therefore, this actual loss number is about 21k lower than infantry casualties. And what will determine the actual winner or loser of a fight is the difference between actual loss and not casualties. This dynamic is also a reason you'll see, for example, whales in GB going to like 100, 200 streaks, because they're not killing everything before you deal any damage to them. You just might deal, say, 50k casualties to them, but the reinforcement dragon skill will offset all of them up until 60k. So you need to do more than 60k casualties to actually have any actual loss on them. And this is why whales are just so strong in the likes of Glorious Battle, because until their resilience gets tanked really hard to the point of them not being able to deal significant amounts of damage to kill you before you get to those 60k defeated, then they're just going to keep racking up more and more and more kills. And that is pretty much it. That is my list of 10 things that you may not have known about reading battle reports in GoTWiC.